Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I never thought I'd be the kind of man telling a story like this. But here I am. My name is Daniel. I'm 39, and until a few months ago, I believed my marriage was stable in the quiet, unremarkable way most long marriages become. Not passionate, not perfect, but dependable. Emily and I had been together for 11 years, married for 8. We own a modest house in a quiet suburb, split chores without arguing, and fell asleep most nights to the same television shows. If someone had asked me then whether I felt replaceable, I would have laughed and said no. Looking back, the first signs were small enough to ignore. Emily started making comments that felt half joking, half sharp. She'd say things like, dating these days is wild, or men our age don't realize how easy it is to move on now. I assumed it was harmless conversation, maybe something she'd seen online or heard from friends. I didn't feel threatened. I trusted her, and I trusted what we'd built. Then she began spending more time on her phone. Not in the obvious, secretive way people warn you about. No sudden password changes or frantic screen locking. Just longer scrolling sessions. Faint smiles that disappeared when I asked what she was reading. If I teased her about it, she'd shrug and say, "Nothing important." I let it go. One night, after dinner, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Can I ask you something without you getting defensive?" That question alone tightened something in my chest. She asked if I ever worried about losing her. I told her honestly that I didn't spend time worrying about it. I said I believed if two people respected each other, they didn't need constant reassurance. She nodded slowly. A week later, she told me she'd joined a women's discussion group online. She described it as a place where people talk about confidence, self-worth, and modern relationships. I supported it. I told her it sounded healthy. That night, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "I just want to make sure we never get too comfortable." The shift came quietly. Compliments disappeared. Small criticisms took their place. The way I dressed, how I talked at gatherings, how predictable I'd become. She never raised her voice. She simply compared. Some men really know how to make a woman feel desired. She'd say, not looking at me. One evening, while we were folding laundry, she dropped her phone face up on the bed. A notification buzzed, and for a second, I saw a dating app logo I didn't recognize. My stomach dipped then steadied. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. When I asked her about it, she didn't panic. She smiled. "It's not what you think," she said. "Actually, it kind of is." She explained that she made a fake dating profile. Not to cheat, she said, but to prove a point. She wanted to show me how easy it would be for her to get attention if she wanted it. To demonstrate, as she put it, that she wasn't dependent on me. I didn't shout. I just asked why. She told me she felt unappreciated, that she needed validation, that I'd grown complacent. Then she said the sentence that lodged itself in my head and refused to leave. "I needed you to understand that you're not my only option." She showed me the profile. Different name. Carefully chosen photos. A bio that didn't sound like the woman I knew. Dozens of messages. Compliments. Invitations. Proof laid out neatly, like evidence in a case she'd already decided. She watched my face as I scrolled. What she didn't see was the moment something in me shifted. Not anger. Not jealousy. Something colder. Something clearer. I realized this wasn't about attention. It was about control. About reminding me that my place in her life was conditional. She asked if I finally understood her value. I handed the phone back and told her I did. That night, we went to bed without speaking. She slept easily. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment I dismissed. By morning, I wasn't hurt anymore. I was alert, because if she'd gone this far to prove I was replaceable, it meant she had no idea what she'd just replaced inside me. And that realization, quiet and heavy, followed me into the next day like a warning I could not ignore. The next day, I woke early, brewed coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring out at the gray sky. Emily was still asleep, oblivious to the storm of thoughts running through my head. I didn't speak to her. I didn't need to. I was already plotting. not out of revenge, but to reclaim my dignity in a situation where I had been reduced to an experiment. The realization was simple. If she wanted to prove I was replaceable, I would respond by showing her how wrong that assumption was. But on my own terms. I started small. The first step was clarity. I deleted old chats that were sentimental, carefully logged out of accounts she might monitor, and began reclaiming my personal space. I changed the passcodes on my phone and laptop. I organized my calendar and made plans without consulting her, not to be petty, but to show that my life was mine. A few days passed. Emily didn't notice the changes immediately. She assumed I was busy with work. But she began to notice the distance, subtle yet deliberate. I stopped initiating unnecessary conversations, stopped complimenting her in a way I once did, stopped filling silences with chatter. I became quiet, almost untouchable, a presence she could no longer take for granted. Then came the real test. I signed up for a professional networking event she'd casually mentioned weeks ago, a chance to meet people in my field, gain insight, and connect outside our domestic bubble. When I mentioned it casually over breakfast, she raised her eyebrows. "You're going?" she asked. I nodded. "I thought you want to spend the evening together." I smiled, not angrily, just with a calm detachment. I have responsibilities, too. That was all I said. She didn't press further. At the event, I noticed something immediately. Confidence grows in the absence of desperation. Men and women were talking, exchanging ideas. I laughed more than I had in months, and people listened. The validation I received wasn't from superficial messages or fake profiles. It was the acknowledgement of competence and presence. Every handshake, every shared insight, was a small reminder that my worth wasn't conditional on Emily's approval. A week later, I returned home to find Emily scrolling on her phone, an odd glint of curiosity, or maybe panic, in her eyes. "Daniel," she said carefully, "I've been thinking about us." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I observed her the way I used to notice her subtle changes in mood. Calmly, deliberately, I let her words hang. "I think maybe I went too far with that profile thing. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her admission sounded rehearsed. Hollow. I didn't need an apology. What mattered was the shift in power she had triggered, and the choice I had made in response. "Emily," I said, voice even, "you didn't hurt me. You just showed me something I hadn't fully accepted, that my life is mine with or without your validation." Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. That night, we didn't argue. We didn't speak much. But I could feel a subtle tension, a recognition that the balance had changed. I was no longer a man to be tested. I was a man aware of his value, and the game she thought she was playing had backfired. Over the following weeks, Emily tried to reestablish connection in small ways. Cooking dinner without prompting, casual touches, soft compliments. But I maintained a measured distance. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but to assert that respect is earned, not coerced through games or artificial tests. The final revelation came one quiet Sunday morning. Emily had left her phone on the kitchen counter while I made coffee. A message preview flashed on the screen from a man on the fake profile. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The fact that she had spent energy building a scenario to test me was enough. I poured my coffee, sat at the table, and smiled quietly. I had passed the test, not by chasing or proving, but by standing still, by reclaiming my space and presence. That evening, she approached me. "Daniel," she said softly, almost cautiously, "I realize now, I misjudged how strong you are. I didn't think you'd respond the way you did." I met her eyes, steady, unflinching. "Emily," I replied, "I didn't respond for you. I responded for me." There was a long pause, a quiet understanding that the old dynamic had been broken. The subtle power play that threatened to unravel us now lay in the open, neutralized by calm awareness. From that day forward, our marriage did not magically heal all wounds, but something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer replaceable, not because I demanded attention, but because I reclaimed myself. In the weeks that followed, Emily's attempt at control waned. The tension that had threaded our days loosened. I continued to live deliberately, pursue my goals, and engage socially without fear of judgment or manipulation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about establishing boundaries and embracing the reality that self-respect cannot be tested or proven artificially. Looking back now, the incident with the fake profile remains one of the most shocking moments of my life, but also one of the most clarifying. She wanted to prove I was replaceable. In doing so, she revealed a truth that I had ignored, that my worth was never conditional on her validation, and that a calm, deliberate response could dissolve even the most manipulative games. Sometimes, the most dramatic transformations are silent, invisible to the eye, but irreversible in effect. Emily's stunt could have broken me, or it could have awakened me. I chose the latter, and that made all the difference.